is faced with a choice that will give him his very first contracted beast. "You want to follow me?" Si Chen asks, looking down at the small creature. The white lion cub, Lion King Leo, answers him with a sharp, determined howl. Standing before the glowing portal, Si Chen declares his intent to conquer every floor of the Devil Tower, one step at a time. He looks at the cub with a serious expression, warning it that the path ahead is dangerous and could even lead to death. Lion King Leo doesn't back down, letting out another brave cry to show its resolve. Si Chen closes his eyes, sensing the cub's determination, and decides to move forward. He calls for the creature to consent to the contract, his eyes glowing with an intense purple light. A star-shaped mark appears in Leo's eye as the system confirms the contract is officially established. The system interface updates, revealing the Star Beastmaster class along with a set of powerful passive and active skills. With the bond formed and skills activated, Si Chen signals for his new companion to head out with him. The two approach the massive, swirling pillar of fire that leads to the tower's second floor. Si Chen steps directly into the flames, ready to face whatever awaits him on the other side. He lands on the new floor, his eyes darting around to assess the environment. They've entered a volcanic nightmare, where molten lava cascades from floating rock formations under a blood-red sky. The heat is stifling, and sweat begins to roll down his face within seconds of arriving. Leo peers over the edge of the jagged cliff, staring down at the churning sea of fire below. Si Chen wonders what kind of monstrosities lurk on this floor, but his thoughts are cut short by a sudden movement. A blinding white flash suddenly erupts, consuming his entire field of vision. In a split second, he senses an overwhelming, lethal force closing in on him. A massive strike blasts through his chest, leaving a gaping hole in his spectral form. Blood splatters across his face as the simulation records a fatal hit. Si Chen bolts upright in his bed, gasping for air as he returns to the real world. He realizes he was killed instantly, without ever catching a single glimpse of the monster. Drenched in sweat, he wonders just what kind of terrifying power dominates the second floor. His sister's voice breaks the silence, calling him from outside to come and eat breakfast. On the table, she's laid out a steaming bowl of pork ramen and a colorful side of fresh fruit. Si Chen sits down, amazed by the absolute feast his sister has prepared for him. Si Yun stuffs a piece of toast into her mouth, reminding him to do the dishes and the laundry while she's out. She's in a hurry to leave for her summer job, ignoring her brother's concerned look. Si Chen asks why she's working, reminding her that he told her to leave the money matters to him. She smiles, telling him she can't fall behind now that her big brother has finally made it to the top. She waves goodbye as she heads out the door, leaving Si Chen to start on his chores. He starts by rinsing the stack of dirty dishes in the kitchen sink. Next, he moves on to hanging the fresh laundry up to dry by the window. He pauses to look at a framed photo of his sister, thinking about how she's always carried herself with such grit. Despite her determination, he knows she's still just a child who deserves to be protected. Checking his tablet, he feels a sense of irony that she's the one taking care of him. His mind wanders to the threat of the demon King Wrath, knowing he won't be able to stay by her side forever. He looks back at the photo, knowing she's the only person in this world he truly worries about. He puts a hand to his head, wondering if there's a way he can manage his duties while keeping her safe. Suddenly, a purple rift tears open in the air above him, and Lion King Leo falls right through it. Si Chen stares in absolute shock as the creature from the tower actually manifests in his room. Si Chen stares at the cub, still processing that he actually managed to summon a beast from the Devil Tower into reality. Leo immediately makes himself at home, shredding tissues and pouncing on everything in sight. Looking at Leo's stats, Si Chen realizes the cub is the perfect candidate to watch over Xiao Yun while he's busy at the tower. The beast binding skill provides a mental link, ensuring he'll know the exact moment she's in any danger. With the astral orbit jump ability, he can warp to the beast's location or summon it back to his side instantly. He remembers how Xiao Yun has always been a softie for animals, constantly stopping to pet every stray she found. Si Chen smirks, confident that she'll have no problem accepting a small lion as her new companion. A sudden, metallic crash from the other room breaks his concentration. He peeks through the doorway, his eyes widening at the mess unfolding in the kitchen. Leo is happily chewing through the ceramic plates, leaving a trail of broken shards across the floor. Outside, the sun begins its descent, casting long, orange shadows over the quiet streets. A security camera sparks and fails, leaving a secluded alleyway completely unmonitored. A wounded man gasps for air, his clothes torn and blood dripping onto the pavement as he retreats. A massive, swirling mass of black and red shadows looms over him, blocking any hope of escape. A shadowy claw pierces right through the man's shoulder, pinning him against the wall. He looks up in pure terror, his voice failing as the monstrous figure looms closer. A predatory red eye locks onto him, gleaming with a cold, malevolent hunger. The devouring process begins, white energy surging through the shadow as it consumes its prey. The sun hangs low over the city as the end of the workday approaches. Xiao Yun heads home, exhausted from her shift at the milk tea shop during the summer rush. She walks through a quiet alley, carrying a couple of drinks and wondering if her brother will like them. The long shadows of the buildings make the path feel narrower and more isolated. She pauses, her eyes darting to the side as she hears the distinct sound of footsteps following her. She spins around, her heart racing, only to be met with a wall of red roses. Jin Duozin steps into the light, greeting her with an arrogant, self-satisfied grin. He's been waiting for her, holding a massive bouquet and looking far too pleased with himself. He tries to smooth over her previous rejection, offering a fancy dinner date as if it's an offer she can't refuse. Xiao Yun stays silent, her expression cold as she stares him down. He boasts about his family's influence, mentioning his father's position to explain how easily he tracked her down. She doesn't mince words, telling him straight to his face that they are from two completely different worlds. She tries to walk past, but he reaches out and grabs her arm, his smile twitching with frustration. He starts yelling about the effort and money he spent, demanding she show him the respect he thinks he's earned. She looks him in the eye, her voice level and sharp as she asks why she should owe him anything. She calls him out for being incredibly creepy for stalking her home, but he only gets more aggressive. Jin Duozin snaps, his face twisting with a sense of entitlement as he towers over her. Before he can finish his threat, Xiao Yun delivers a powerful headbutt right to his nose. He drops to the ground, clutching his face while she tells him to get his brain checked at his dad's hospital. She stomps away without a backward glance, her mood completely soured by the encounter. Back at the apartment, the warm glow from the window stands out against the darkening sky. Her anger vanishes the moment she sees the tiny, white cub waiting for her inside. Her eyes turn to hearts, all her exhaustion forgotten at the sight of the adorable creature. She scoops Leo up in a tight hug, beaming as she asks her brother where he found such an amazing little beast. Si Chen sits back and watches as Xiao Yun cradles the white cub, informing her that Leo is now her responsibility. She beams with excitement, hardly able to believe she's allowed to keep a lion in their home. As she pets him, Xiao Yun notices something strange. Despite his tiny size, Leo already has a long, thick mane. She wonders aloud if only adult male lions are supposed to grow them, but the cub just purrs contentedly in her arms. Xiao Yun quickly brushes aside her confusion, deciding she'll head out tomorrow to get a magical beast adoption license and make everything official. Si Chen remains quiet, a faint smile on his face as he observes their immediate bond. Seeing how fond she is of the cub gives Si Chen a sense of relief. With Leo there to protect her, he can finally stop worrying about her safety at home and focus on his own path. A sharp chime cuts through the quiet moment as his phone vibrates against the table. Si Chen picks up the device, his expression shifting to one of focused anticipation as he waits for the screen to light up. The light of the display reflects in his crimson eyes, highlighting a cold, determined gaze as he reads the new message. An email from the Guild's Supervisory Bureau confirms that his application has been officially approved. He stares at the screen, knowing that his plan can finally move into its next phase. His focus tightens on the immediate future, the tiebreaker assessment scheduled for 6 days from now. Winning is no longer just an option, it's a necessity. 6 days have passed since the events at the hospital, and the sun finally rises on a pivotal day. It's time for the official tiebreaker assessment that will determine who truly deserves the title of top graduate. The scene shifts to the outskirts of Greenlight Forest at 15:10. The air is still, the silence of the ancient woods only broken by the distant, eerie rustle of leaves. Gong Xuan, the director of career services, steps forward with his signature round glasses and sharp mustache. He commands attention from the two candidates as he prepares to deliver the final briefing for the exam. The assessment is set to take place within the Wild Devil's Cave, a portal hidden inside the hollow of a massive, glowing tree. Gong Xuan warns that despite the setting, this is a dangerous D-rank dungeon. Si Chen and Gong Ting stand side by side at the cave's entrance, looking ready for the challenge. A small drone hovers above them, tasked with broadcasting every move of the two rivals for the examiners to see. Gong Xuan warns them that the internal environment of a wild cave is completely unknown. Unlike the controlled simulations at school, the risks in this untamed lair are far more lethal. To handle the danger, 3 senior guild raid members have been dispatched from the Dongxin Nation to serve as proctors. They stand watch on the grassy field, looking entirely unimpressed by a mere student exam. Ivan, a silver-haired warrior from the Empire Guild, stands with a cigarette hanging from his lips. He's a veteran proctor who will be following the candidates into the depths of the cave. Caillou represents the Divine Eye Guild, her eyes sharp and blue beneath the brim of her cowboy hat. She is introduced as a C-rank nuclear shooter, ready to provide protection if things go south. Joining them is Yuta Sato from the Yinfeng Guild, a C-rank star warrior with thick dreadlocks. He hides his expression behind dark sunglasses, wearing a calm, expectant smirk. High above in the monitoring room, the atmosphere is analytical, as the faculty prepares to watch the live feeds. The examiner's scores will be the final word on who comes out on top today. Among the observers is Gong Ting's father, who stares at the screen with a mysterious grin. He leans his chin on his hand, appearing highly amused by the impending chaos, having already completely bribed those 3 proctors. Standing nearby, the principal spoke up, questioning why the vice chairman was still here when his official itinerary had already ended 2 days ago. Gong Lin didn't even look away from the screens upon hearing the question. Carl Cavendish simply smiles, wondering what could possibly be more interesting than the clash about to unfold. To him, the chance to witness these 2 geniuses in a real-world scenario is worth the extra time. On the screen, the focus remains on Si Chen and Gong Ting as they prepare to enter the portal. The freckled youth's gaze is fixed on the duo, his eyes filled with a quiet, predatory curiosity. Carl Cavendish admits that he hasn't witnessed a duel between true geniuses in many years. For a man in his position, this is a rare treat that he's genuinely looking forward to seeing. Outside, Gong Xuan raises his hand toward the swirling green energy of the portal. With a loud voice, he officially opens the gates to the Wild Devil's Cave. This is it, the National Awakener University class of 2157 graduation combat assessment. The one-on-one tiebreaker has finally arrived to settle the score. Si Chen's gaze is cold and focused, a sharp contrast to Gong Ting's intense, golden eyes. The rivalry between them reaches a peak in this silent moment of final confrontation. Si Chen versus Gong Ting, it officially begins. With the shout, the energy of the portal pulses with brilliant light. The 2 candidates step forward, their silhouettes swallowed by the intense green glow of the entrance. They descend into the cavernous maw of the cave, leaving the safety of the surface far behind. The gnarled branches of the dead forest seem to reach out as they disappear into the darkness. Inside, the cave is a graveyard of twisted, dead trees and eerie mist. Si Chen stays vigilant, his crimson eyes scanning the shadows for the first sign of an ambush. The 3 senior examiners follow closely behind, noting the flora-type nature of the lair. Ivan suggests taking a smoke break, but the others remind him that the cameras are still rolling. Suddenly, a jagged red pulse flickers across Si Chen's vision. His heart skips a beat as a digital warning begins to glitch into existence right in front of him. A high-risk warning blares in red, catching Si Chen off guard. His system is reacting violently to something hidden deep within the cave's stale atmosphere. He's shocked. It's the first time his devil heart has ever issued such a direct and urgent alert. The message, "High-risk monster detected," flashes across his interface in bold letters. The red distortion lingers for a moment, bathing his face in an ominous, flickering glow. He can feel the weight of the threat through the system's reaction. The system escalates even further, screaming danger, and highly dangerous in bold, hexagonal patterns. The threat level is way beyond what a simple D-rank dungeon should be able to hold. Si Chen's eyes narrowed as the extremely high rank warning pulses again. This is a level of danger he hadn't anticipated for what was supposed to be a standard graduation test. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the alert vanishes into the darkness. The cave returns to its silent, foggy state, leaving Si Chen to wonder if it was a glitch or a grim promise of what's to come. He looks around the eerie, dead forest, questioning how a high-rank monster could even exist inside a low-level D-rank lair. Something about this dungeon is fundamentally wrong. He remains silent for now, maintaining his pace and staying close behind his rival. He knows he can't afford to be distracted for even a second. Gong Ting continues to lead with confident strides, his katana held firmly at his side. He seems completely unaware of the digital storm that just played out across Si Chen's vision. From a ledge above, the examiners watch as the fog thickens around the candidates. They remind each other to stay alert and never let the examinees out of their sight in this low visibility. A sharp, cracking sound echoes through the cavern, and a massive shape bursts from the rocky terrain with a violent force. The piece of the cave is shattered in an instant. A toxin cage ant, a D-rank AoE archer monster, emerges from the rubble. Its mandibles click with a predatory rhythm as it prepares to strike the intruders. Gong Ting's hand instantly goes to his hilt, his grip tightening with a practiced ease. He doesn't show a single hint of hesitation as he faces down the insectoid threat. In one fluid motion, he draws his katana and lunges forward. His body becomes a blur of motion against the gray cave walls as he closes the gap with surprising speed. High above, Yuta Sato watches with an impressed smirk, nodding that Gong Ting's reaction is lightning fast. He warns the others that wild monsters are far more vicious than the ones kept in school lairs. The ant retaliates by firing a corrosive poison shot, launching a volley of glowing green acid orbs toward the intruder. The air sizzles as the toxic projectiles streak through the cavern. Gong Ting charges straight ahead with incredibly fluid movements, easily slicing away these attacks. He leaves a trail of light in his wake as he prepares to unleash a decisive counterattack. His body is a blur of lethal precision as he slices cleanly through the toxin cage ant. The monster has its tail severed by his blade before it can even register his presence in the fog. Its tail hits the cave floor with a wet thud, its glowing green venom sac leaking out and soaking the gnarled roots. The speed and efficiency of this finishing blow are truly perfect. Gong Ting brings his katana around in a wide arc, the metal glowing with an intense, golden heat. He focuses his energy for a finishing blow that leaves no room for any counterattack. The glowing blade pierces straight through the core of the largest ant, vaporizing its internal organs in an instant. Green fluids spray across the cavern as the creature is completely neutralized. He activates his core warrior skill, blazing blade penetration, creating a massive explosion of golden light. The impact sends a violent shockwave through the tunnel, clearing out any remaining threats. Up on the observation ledge, the three veteran proctors watch the display with analytical eyes. The sheer power and technique shown by a student are clearly exceeding even their high expectations. Caillou, the C-rank nuclear shooter, taps her wristwatch to log her score. She awards Gong Ting a perfect 10 for his on-the-spot response, impressed by how quickly he neutralized the ambush. Ivan exhales a plume of smoke, his gaze fixed on the battlefield below. He awards another 10 for battle logic, noting how the candidate immediately prioritized destroying the monster's ranged venom organ. Yuta Sato adds his own perfect score for finishing intensity, watching the carnage with a wide, toothy grin. He's never seen a high schooler display such cold, clinical decisiveness against a wild D-rank monster. Gong Ting sheathes his blade with a crisp, mechanical click, standing amidst the carnage without a single hair out of place. He looks every bit the elite student that every major guild is currently fighting over. Yuta Sato's attention shifts to the other monitor, where Si Chen's feed is playing. His expression turns from excitement to pure confusion as he watches the second candidate's performance. To the proctors, Si Chen's performance looks like a complete disaster. He didn't even flinch when the monsters appeared. He just keeps wandering aimlessly through the gnarled trees, seemingly lost in the cave. Gong Ting glances back, his brow furrowed in a silent, judgmental question. He can't understand what his rival is doing, or why he's letting himself fall so far behind in the scoring. Back in the high-tech monitoring room, the officials watch the screens in silence. The contrast between Gong Ting's flashy combat and Si Chen's slow walk creates a heavy, awkward tension in the room. Carl leans back in his seat, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. He turns to the distinguished elder beside him, asking what he thinks Si Chen is actually looking for in that darkness. The principal doesn't seem worried in the slightest by this silence. The old man watches the screen with a knowing, steady gaze, his years of experience telling him that this isn't just aimless wandering. On the screen, Si Chen's boot crunches down on a thick, pulsating root. He's finally reached the heart of the cavern where the fog is thickest and the heavy air feels almost suffocating. The principal predicts that the boy isn't lost. He's looking for a way to grab a massive, game-ending high score in a single, devastating shot. The old man sees the strategy hidden in the silence. Si Chen's eyes suddenly glow with a fierce, golden light as he clenches his fist. Sparks of electricity dance between his fingers as he whispers a single phrase, "Found it." A massive pillar of yellow lightning erupts from the ground, tearing through the cave's ceiling with a violent roar. The power is so immense that the solid rock beneath his feet begins to fracture and crumble. The lightning column expands into a blinding sphere of pure energy, illuminating the entire dungeon. Si Chen stands at the very epicenter, looking like a god of thunder amidst the surrounding chaos. Scores of monsters are caught in the blast, their forms reduced to shadows before being completely vaporized. The sheer scale of the destruction is far beyond anything a D-rank exam was designed for. The proctors are nearly knocked off their feet by the sheer intensity of the shockwave. Caillou and Yuta Sato stare in horror as they realize Si Chen didn't just find a monster, he found the entire nest. Gong Ting watches the distant light show with wide, trembling eyes. He realizes the terrifying truth. While he was hunting individual monsters, Si Chen was planning to wipe out the whole dungeon in one move. Si Chen's silhouette blurs as he kicks off the ground, leaving a trail of crackling yellow sparks behind him. His movement is so fast it defies the eyes of even the senior proctors watching the feed. The system notification flashes the name of the legendary skill, Volt Assassin. He descends upon the remaining swarms like a golden bolt of lightning from the heavens. He weaves through the air, his body trailing razor-sharp beams of electricity that cut through everything in their path. Every pass leaves another group of toxin cage ants sliced into glowing green ribbons. The monsters don't even have time to shriek before they are bisected by the high-voltage arcs. It's no longer a fight. It's a systematic, lightning-fast extermination of the entire lair. Lightning beams crisscross the cavern in a complex web of destruction, tracing the path of Si Chen's impossible speed. He's moving so fast that he appears to be in multiple places at once. He lands in a crouch as the final wave of monsters behind him literally disintegrates into ash. The air in the cavern is thick with the sharp smell of ozone and burnt chitin. Si Chen stands slowly, sheathing his power as the last of the green monster blood rains down around him. He looks completely unfazed, his breathing calm despite the mass slaughter he just performed. The proctors are frozen, their faces pale and covered in sweat. Yuta Sato pulls down his sunglasses, his voice trembling as he asks what they just witnessed from an E-rank student. In the monitoring room, the technical staff is scrambling for answers. They can't reconcile the report of him being E-rank with the level of total destruction currently displayed on their screens. The proctors whisper among themselves, completely lost on how to even begin grading a performance like this. It was reckless and repetitive, but the results are undeniably overwhelming and efficient. Gong Ting's frustration is visible even through the low-quality feed. He was the golden boy of the class, but in a single move, Si Chen has completely overshadowed his entire career. Carl bursts into laughter, his amused laughter echoing through the observation room. He teases the old man for calling it perfectly, clearly delighted by this unexpected turn of events. Gong Lin watches with a stern expression as the freckled youth notes that the exam has barely started. His interest in the two candidates has reached an all-time high after that display. A hand clenches tightly in a silent fist, showing the mounting tension among the observers in the monitoring room. No one expected an assessment to turn into such a high-stakes show of power. Suddenly, the live video feed begins to distort, flickering with digital artifacts and heavy static. The high-resolution image of Si Chen starts to break apart on the main screens. A massive warning box slams across the screens with a harsh red alert. Signal lost. The monitoring room is suddenly plunged into a confusing, blue-tinted darkness as the feed cuts out completely. The principal and Gong Lin look at each other anxiously, their eyes widening at this sudden and total technical failure. They have lost all eyes inside the Wild Devil's cave at a critical moment. Outside the lair at 16:00, the situation is even more chaotic. A technician in a lab coat frantically types at his terminal, his face illuminated by the green glow of the portal and the red flash of emergency alerts. The monitoring screens flicker violently, flashing a red signal anomaly warning. The communication signal strength drops to a critical 23%, and the lair scan begins to glitch under the pressure of an unknown interference. The diagnostic display completely loses synchronization, with the communication signal flatlining at 0%. In place of the standard D-rank classification, a massive, pixelated question mark appears over the risk level. The supervisor stares at his handheld device, sweat beading on his forehead as the incoming data becomes unreadable. Behind his glasses, his eyes widen in shock as he realizes that something utterly catastrophic has happened to the exam environment. In the control area outside the portal, a technician in a lab coat flails his arms in a panic. Gong Xuan points urgently at the flickering monitor, his voice rising as he demands to know why the lair's parameters are shifting so rapidly. The swirling green vortex of the dungeon entrance, which had been a stable gateway just moments ago, begins to waver and lose its luminous cohesion. With a final, violent flicker, the green portal collapses into a jagged, pitch-black void. The technician recoils in shock, shouting that the entrance has completely vanished, effectively trapping everyone inside the cave. Deep within the dungeon, the air is suddenly filled with a surreal, swirling magenta energy. Ghostly musical notes drift through the darkness, accompanied by flickering trails of sickly green light. Si Chen stands amidst the growing aura, the magenta energy coiling around him like sentient smoke. The atmosphere has shifted from a monster hunt to something far more ancient and sinister. He turns his head, his sharp gaze fixed on the center of the energy phenomenon. A look of grim recognition flashes across his face as he realizes the identity of the power manifesting before him. From the heart of the void, a pair of narrowed, crimson eyes ignite beneath a blinding flash of magenta light. The haunting presence of Demon King, wrath begins to echo through the cavern, marking a terrifying turn in the exam. Outside the demon's lair, things have gone from bad to worse. The cave entrance where the hunters just entered has completely vanished, leaving the staff outside staring at a solid cliffside. Gong Xuan is in an absolute panic, drenched in sweat as he screams for someone to request immediate backup from the superiors, because all the equipment has gone haywire, and they've completely lost the signal from the team inside. Inside the dungeon, the air is thick with a heavy, pulsating magenta aura. Si Chen stands amidst floating musical notes that seem to vibrate with a sinister energy, making the atmosphere feel suffocating. Gong Ting stops in his tracks, looking over his shoulder. He can feel the shift in the air, though he hasn't yet pinpointed the source of this strange, rhythmic vibration. The rest of the hunters are just as confused. The cowboy hunter asks if anyone else heard that, while Yuta Sato notes that something definitely feels wrong about the unnatural silence. Si Chen's heart starts pounding as a deep thumping sound begins to echo through the mist. He recognizes that sound immediately. It's the voice of the Demon King, Wrath. The sound waves ripple through the darkness, glowing with a malevolent pink light. The thumping isn't just a sound, it's a presence that feels like it's vibrating through their very bones. Cold sweat beads on his forehead as the realization sinks in. Wrath isn't supposed to show up for another 3 years, meaning the timeline he knows is already starting to fracture. Suddenly, Si Chen's system starts screaming warnings. Red icons flash in his vision, signaling that a high-risk monster has just been detected nearby. He looks back down the path into the thick, swirling fog. Something massive is moving through the trees and webs, its steps heavy and deliberate as it approaches the group. High-pitched, mocking laughter echoes through the cavern, followed by the sound of skittering footsteps. The predator is closing in, moving through the mist with chilling confidence. Yuta Sato and the cowboy hunter tense up, staring into the impenetrable mist. They can sense something watching them from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Two glowing pink eyes pierce through the thick fog like searchlights. A massive shadow looms behind the veil, towering over the hunters as it slowly steps out of the gloom. A mantis monster finally reveals itself, its green chitinous body covered in sharp spikes. It stands tall amidst the massive webs, its scythe-like arms glistening with a sickly light. The creature actually speaks, its voice a raspy, taunting hiss. It mocks the humans, telling them they've walked straight into its trap and taken the bait. Yuta Sato's jaw drops as he hears the monster use human language. This level of intelligence is a clear sign that they're dealing with a threat far beyond a typical beast. The group realizes they're in way over their heads. This is at least a C-rank high-tier beast, and there's no reason for something this powerful to exist in a D-rank dungeon. Yuta Sato doesn't wait for it to move first. He leaps forward with a battle cry, swinging his massive pink glowing axe with every ounce of strength he has. He shouts for the others to get back as he brings the heavy blade down in a wide arc. It looks like a powerful hit, but the monster's speed is on a completely different level. In a flash of green and red, the mantis strikes back. Yuta Sato doesn't even have time to react before his arm is severed, blood spraying as his axe falls uselessly to the ground. The cowboy hunter and white coat hunter can only watch in paralyzed horror. The sheer brutality and speed of the attack leave them unable to even draw their weapons. The mantis isn't finished yet. It zips through the group like a ghost, its raspy voice whispering that they should all just give up and die right here. Gong Ting tries to intercept the next move, but a jagged blade punches straight through his shoulder. Blood splatters across his coat as he's pinned by the force of the strike. The monster leans in close, its pink eyes glowing with sadistic glee. It savors the moment, relishing the sight of a human genius being brought so low. Gong Ting grinds his teeth, his face contorting in agony as the blade remains lodged in his flesh. He isn't going down that easily, though. With a roar of defiance, he swings his glowing orange blade upward. He manages to catch the mantis off guard, slicing clean through its arm and forcing the creature to release him. The monster screeches in shock, staring down at its own severed limb. It clearly didn't expect a human to have the sheer willpower to fight back after receiving such a lethal wound. Gong Ting doesn't give the beast a single second to recover. He follows up with a powerful kick that sends the creature skidding across the rocky ground. The mantis claws at the dirt, trying to regain its footing as it retreats. It's injured, but the fight is still very much in its favor. Gong Ting staggers, clutching his bleeding shoulder. He looks over at Si Chen, his expression dark as he insists that the monster targeted him first. His eyes glow with a fierce, golden light. He's determined to handle this himself, telling the others that they aren't allowed to interfere in his battle. Si Chen stays silent, watching his rival's grim resolve. He can see that Gong Ting is pushing himself far past his physical limits just to stay standing. Si Chen's own eyes begin to glow with a sharp, calculating green light. He's analyzing the situation, waiting for the system to give him the information he needs. A system window pops up in Si Chen's vision, identifying Gong Ting as C-rank. Si Chen glances over at the mantis monster and sees that it is also C-rank. In this situation, he can just let Gong Ting handle it on his own without needing to get involved. The cowboy hunter and white coat hunter realize the situation has become hopeless. They beg Gong Ting to seek immediate treatment and suggest a retreat before it's too late. Gong Ting doesn't even look at them. Instead, He ignites a burst of intense flames in his palm and presses the fire directly against his open shoulder wound. Si Chen watches in grim fascination. He realizes Gong Ting is using high-temperature flames to cauterize the injury so he can keep fighting without bleeding out. Smoke and the acrid smell of burning flesh fill the air as Gong Ting stands tall once more. He flatly rejects the suggestion to retreat, his voice steady despite the unimaginable pain. He roars that the duel must go on, his eyes burning with an intensity that matches the flames now coating his blade. The mantis monster lowers its head, its pink eyes narrowing as it prepares for the next clash. It recognizes that its prey has transformed into something far more dangerous. Gong Ting leaps into the air, his flaming sword held high for a finishing blow. He's putting everything into this final strike, a trail of fire following him as he dives toward the monster. Outside the demon's lair, the investigation team is at a complete standstill. The entrance to the dungeon has vanished into thin air, leaving a group of nervous soldiers and a frantic staff member staring at a solid wall of rock. Lan Yue, the leader of the Imperial Guild, arrives on the scene to assess the anomaly. He explains that this is a deliberate tactic. The dungeon opens its gates to lure hunters inside, then snaps shut to trap them like rats. Standing nearby, Gong Chuan trembles violently, screaming that they have to do something because Gong Ting is still trapped inside. But Lan Yue remains cold and composed, his gaze fixed intently on the mountain. He doesn't sugarcoat the situation, telling the panicked man that there's only one way they're getting that entrance open again. It's not about finding a key or using tech, it's about survival. Deep within the darkness of the lair, the source of the problem pulses with a malevolent red glow. The only way to break the seal is to kill the lord of the lair, the monster ruling this entire nest. Gong Chuan wipes the sweat from his forehead, trying to find a glimmer of hope as he points out that a D-rank dungeon should only have a C-rank lord at most, which shouldn't be an impossible task for hunters of their caliber. Lan Yue cuts him off immediately, calling his logic a dangerous delusion. He realizes that the D-tier rank was nothing but a disguise used by the Lord to trick the association and lure in unsuspecting prey. His eyes narrow as he reveals his true observation. This dungeon is highly likely the real culprit behind a long-standing series of mysterious hunter disappearances that had gone unsolved for years. This news comes like a splash of cold water, leaving Gong Chuan trembling in fear as a heavy sense of guilt begins to well up inside him upon realizing that they have driven the student straight into a death trap. Lan Yue confirms his worst fears with a final, grim assessment. This isn't some low-level cave. It's actually an extremely high-risk B-tier dungeon masquerading as a walk in the park. Back inside the chaos, the fight is reaching a breaking point. The mantis monster lunges forward with its scythes glowing a sickly green, determined to shred anything in its path. Gong Ting isn't backing down, though. He dances through the air, dodging a series of lethal strikes as his flaming blade leaves trails of orange light in the dark cavern. He skids to a halt, his breathing heavy but his eyes focused. He's already taken a hit to the shoulder, and he knows he doesn't have much time before the blood loss starts slowing him down. The mantis lets out an ear-piercing screech, its pink eyes glowing with frustration as its prey continues to evade its strikes. It raises its massive scythe arms for one final, crushing blow. Gong Ting doesn't wait for it to swing. He leaps high into the air, putting every ounce of his remaining strength into an overhead strike that crackles with heat. The powerful impact forces its scythe arm to plunge deep into the ground, leaving it completely stuck and unable to pull itself free. As the dust settles, Gong Ting finds the opening he was looking for. He moves with a blur of speed, his glowing blade cutting a perfect arc through the air toward the creature's neck. A single, clean slash finishes the job. The mantis's head is severed from its body, blood spraying across the rocks as Gong Ting lands firmly on the ground. The monster's head bounces and rolls across the floor, its pink eyes still flickering with a dim light. It seems like the immediate threat has finally been neutralized. The rest of the group gathers around, looking at the remains of the beast. Si Chen and the others watch as the severed head stops moving, a heavy silence falling over the cavern. Si Chen keeps his distance, his expression unreadable as he watches his rival. He admits to himself that Gong Ting's strength is impressive, having taken down a high-tier monster while wounded and alone. Gong Ting stands over his kill, his posture still tense despite the victory. He isn't the type to underestimate an opponent, and something about the way the body is twitching feels wrong. Meanwhile, the white coat hunter moves in to help Yuta Sato, who is clutching the stump of his arm. A green healing aura glows around the wound, but they both know a lost limb can't be fixed that easily. Yuta Sato looks down at his wristband, his face pale as he notices the red warning light blinking on the screen. He tries to check the time or the signal, but nothing is responding. The screen is a mess of red symbols and a giant X over the signal bars. It's official. They've completely lost contact with the outside world, and their navigation gear is dead. The cowboy hunter checks her own equipment and gets the same result. The compass is spinning wildly, and the communication devices are nothing but useless weights now. Nearby, the small camera drone that was supposed to be broadcasting their exam lies shattered on the ground. Its lens is cracked, and its lights are dark, meaning no one outside can see what's happening to them. Gong Ting turns his head, sensing a new vibration in the air. He's starting to realize that the victory he just achieved might have been part of a much larger plan. Behind him, the headless body of the mantis monster begins to rise, green blood bubbling from the stump of its neck. It shouldn't be able to move, yet it's standing up as if nothing happened. Before Gong Ting can react, the creature lunges again, its scythes moving in a mindless, violent frenzy. It's like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings, attacking with zero regard for its own lack of a head. Suddenly, a series of yellow slashes appear on the monster's body, tearing it into pieces in a fraction of a second. Si Chen steps in to end it, moving with a speed that the others can barely follow. A series of yellow energy slashes tear the body apart, and a system message confirms he's earned 2,000 experience points for the kill. Gong Ting stares at the smoking remains, his face covered in sweat and blood. He can't wrap his head around how a decapitated monster could still find the strength to launch an attack. Si Chen looks back at him, his red eyes cold. He explains that the monster was never acting of its own will. It was in a hypnotized state from the start, allowing it to move even after its brain was gone. He turns to the rest of the group, his voice sharp with urgency. He warns them that they need to get out of this lair immediately, or they'll be the next ones to lose control of their own bodies. Gong Ting stares at him, half shocked and half suspicious. He demands to know how a student could possibly know so much about the inner workings of a high-tier dungeon like this. Yuta Sato isn't convinced either, shouting through the pain that Si Chen is talking nonsense. He insists that a dungeon of this rank can only house one lord, and they just finished fighting it. Too lazy to argue, Si Chen simply walks past them, while the other hunters insist that the monster they just defeated must be the boss since it was at least an upper C rank, far too powerful for a typical D rank dungeon. Suddenly, his system interface turns blood red, multiple warning signs flashing across his vision. It's detected a high-danger, high-rank monster nearby, and the threat level is off the charts. A massive wave of magenta energy ripples through the cavern walls, vibrating with a frequency that pierces straight into the brain. It's the Lord's command, and it's hitting everyone at once. The cowboy hunter is the first to go. Her eyes roll back and start glowing with a terrifying pink light, her body going stiff as the hypnosis takes hold. The white coat hunter and Yuta Sato follow right after, their expressions turning blank and vacant as the same pink glow fills their eyes. They've become puppets in the Lord's game, and their own minds are no longer their own. Si Chen touches his earpiece, a grim expression on his face as he realizes the frequency has already done its work on the others. He's the only one left standing with a clear mind. The air vibrates with intense magenta sound waves emanating from the Lord's power. Si Chen recognizes the deadly pattern immediately. It's a frequency he's encountered before. He recalls a horrific memory from his past life, where the Demon King Wrath used this exact frequency to turn a crowd into a bloody mess. The sound was designed to shatter minds from the inside out. A vision of a younger Si Chen in the rain, clutching a fallen ally, flashes through his mind as he remembers the devastation that followed the sound. The weight of that failure still haunts him. The sound wave was a weapon of mass slaughter, a pulsating orb of energy designed to hypnotize and destroy ordinary humans on a global scale. It was a tool for absolute domination. Si Chen shakes off the memory and focuses on the present, his gaze shifting to his companions who have already fallen under the spell. He stands apart from the group, watching their transformation. The cowboy hunter, white coat hunter, and Yuta Sato walk forward in a trance, their eyes burning with a hollow pink light. They move with an unnatural, synchronized gait toward the heart of the cavern. Si Chen's eyes narrow as he makes the connection between the current threat and the demon he remembers from the future. The lord of this lair is definitely an underling or a manifestation of wrath. The group follows the energy trails deeper into the cavern, moving like puppets toward the source of the vibration. The magenta light pulses like a heartbeat along the walls. In the shadows, the silhouette of the mindless hunters creates a chilling procession through the jagged rocks. They are being led straight into the jaws of the monster. They emerge into a vast central chamber where the fog is thick and the light is a sickly shade of violet. Giant green eggs pulse with a dim light along the cave floor. Before them stands the lord of the lair, a terrifying figure draped in white with long hair cascading down, flanked by massive black serpents. It towers over the hypnotized hunters. The ground is a literal graveyard, piled high with the skeletal remains and discarded gear of every hunter who ever entered this nest. Rusty swords and cracked shields are half buried in the dirt. Si Chen's earpiece glows blue as it emits a counter-frequency, shielding his mind from the alpha band waves that have enslaved the others. He had planned for this exact scenario long ago. He watches his allies stand defenseless before the Lord, knowing that without his intervention, they will be the next skeletons on the floor. He has to act before the feeding begins. The lord of the lair lets out a raspy, unnatural hiss as it senses the presence of new prey. The snakes surrounding it hiss in unison, their pink eyes fixed on the intruders. It speaks in a disjointed voice, its words echoing through the chamber with a hunger that has been building for centuries. The vibrations of its voice are heavy with malice. Si Chen stands ready, his red eyes fixed on the monstrosity as it salivates over the prospect of fresh meat. He isn't just another victim, he's the one who's going to end this. A small hand grips a wooden club, fresh blood dripping from the end onto the white tiles. A young Gong Ting stands over another boy on the floor, clutching the broken weapon. He's covered in bruises and blood, but he's the one left standing at the end of the match. His father, Gong Lin, watches from the shade with a cold, clinical approval. He acknowledges that today, Gong Ting was the one who won. The 8-year-old version of Gong Ting stares back, his face a mess of cuts and dirt. There's no pride or joy in this victory, only the weight of survival. Gong Lin commands the winners to follow him inside to eat. He leaves the losers behind on the pavement without a second glance. Gong Ting's brother, Gong Cheng, stays on the ground. He's forced to kneel there in disgrace all night as punishment for being weak. Night falls and the moon hangs high over the silent courtyard. Gong Cheng is still there, his stomach growling as he shivers in the cold. Suddenly, a hand reaches out from the shadows, offering a warm loaf of bread. It's Gong Ting. He snuck out of the house to feed his brother despite the bandages covering his own wounds. He tells Gong Cheng to keep quiet and eat as fast as he can. If their father catches them, the punishment for both of them will be far worse. The sound of a sharp strike echoes through the room, cutting through the silence. Gong Ting is back on his knees, shivering as his father towers over him with a stick. He's being taught another brutal lesson about the family legacy. Gong Lin demands to know if his son understands why the Gong family has achieved such power. In his mind, it's because they have always been the winners. To him, the world is divided into those who set the rules and those who follow them. He makes it clear that only the winner has the right to decide how things work. He tells the boy that as long as he is in charge, Gong Ting has no choice but to obey his rules. Bruised and bleeding, Gong Ting grits his teeth and looks up. He asks if beating his father means he finally gets to set the rules himself. Gong Lin just scoffs at the boy's defiance, unimpressed by his spirit. A practice sword lies shattered on the training floor, a testament to the intensity of their sessions. Years later, a teenage Gong Ting is back on the floor, coughing up blood. He's been thoroughly defeated once again, his pride shattered along with his defense. Standing over him is Mu Jin, a cold and elite swordsman. He holds a jagged blade made of glowing ice, looking down with complete indifference. Gong Lin's voice remains as cold as the ice sword. He explains that power isn't just about raw strength, but about the control one wields over others. He walks away from his defeated son, leaving him in the dust of the grand training hall. To him, the rules of the world are absolute. He repeats the same tired mantra: methods don't matter, only the result. He demands that his son always be first, no matter what it takes. Gong Ting stays on the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. His father tells him to win even if he has to throw away his family, his ideals, or his own humanity. Gong Lin's eyes narrow behind his glasses. In his world, winning is the only value that matters, and everything else is just baggage. He drills it into his son's head that his only worth comes from victory. Without it, he is nothing in this world. Young Gong Ting stares into the distance, those cruel words echoing in his mind until they become his own reality. Back in the present, the Lord of the Lair looms on his throne of serpents, his power radiating through the cavern. The ancient figure seems to be waiting for his prey to succumb. Si Chen remains completely unaffected. His wireless earpiece is pumping out beta-band audio, perfectly canceling out the Lord's hypnotic frequency. He looks over at the other hunters, whose eyes are glowing with a vacant, hypnotic red. Without an anchor to reality, they're walking straight into a death trap. Yellow lightning begins to crackle around Si Chen's hand. He knows he has to take out the Lord quickly to break the spell over his allies. Suddenly, a blood-stained hand reaches out and grabs Si Chen's wrist, stopping him in his tracks. It's Gong Ting. He's barely standing and clutching a massive, bleeding wound on his chest, but his eyes are clear. He's managed to resist the Lord's control. His fingers dig into his own flesh, the white-hot pain of the injury acting as a barrier against the hypnotic waves. It's the only way he's kept his mind his own. Blood continues to drip steadily onto the floor from his ruined clothes, pooling around his feet. Gong Ting gasps for air, his face pale from blood loss. He tells Si Chen that he's found his own way to stay sane in this nightmare. He warns the protagonist that making a move now would be suicide. If Si Chen exposes himself too soon, everyone in the room will be in immediate danger. Gong Ting directs Si Chen's attention toward the shadows lining the cave walls. Dozens of massive, glowing green eggs are clustered together in the darkness, pulsating with a rhythmic light. These are flower assassin mantis eggs. If they're alarmed, they'll face a swarm of C-rank monsters that will tear through the group before they can even react. The Lord purposely disguised this place as a low-rank lair to lure in hunters and drain them dry. The skeletons scattered around are proof of his success. Gong Ting's expression remains grim. He knows the Lord won't stay seated forever. Eventually, the predator will come to its prey. Si Chen and Gong Ting stay low, hidden behind the rocky terrain. Si Chen suggests they wait for the perfect opening to strike together when the Lord of the Lair gets close. Si Chen is genuinely surprised by the plan. He didn't expect his rival to have this much foresight in such a chaotic situation. Si Chen knows their current plan won't be enough. He realizes the Lord doesn't even need to move a muscle to end their lives. With just a single thought, the Lord can trigger a lethal psychological command. Purple energy pulses from the throne, signaling the start of a mass hypnotic event. Yuta Sato is the first to succumb, a vacant and terrifying smile on his face. His eyes glow pink as he raises his own energy blade to his throat. The cowboy hunter is right behind him, pressing a revolver against their temple with a steady hand. The word "commit" flashes across the scene like a death sentence. The white coat hunter follows the command as well, his fingers locking around his own neck. The Lord's order for suicide has completely overtaken their minds. Before they can finish themselves off, Si Chen moves in a flash of yellow lightning. He knocks each of the hypnotized hunters unconscious to save them from the Lord's influence. The Lord of the Lair recoils in shock, his glowing pink eyes wide. He didn't expect anyone to be able to resist his frequency. The Lord's telepathic voice rasps through the chamber, sensing that Si Chen has somehow protected himself. The other hunters lie safely unconscious on the cave floor. Enraged by the failure of his hypnosis, the Lord issues a new, violent command to his minions. He wants the intruders dead immediately. A mantis monster screeches as it lunges forward, its scythe-like arms ready to strike. It's part of the swarm that's been waiting in the shadows. Dozens of flower assassin mantises begin to flood the chamber, their pink eyes glowing in the darkness. The Lord has unleashed his entire army to finish the job. The swarm surrounds the group from all sides, cutting off any easy escape. The numbers are quickly becoming overwhelming. Gong Ting looks down at his blood-soaked shoulder, his face grim. He knows they've run out of time and options for their original plan. He draws his sword with a sharp ring and turns to Si Chen. He has one final favor to ask of the person he once considered just a rival. He tells Si Chen to grab the 3 fallen hunters and get out of the lair while he still has the chance. Gong Ting is ready to stay behind and face the swarm alone. Si Chen stares at him, caught off guard by the sudden display of self-sacrifice. He sees a side of Gong Ting he never knew existed. Gong Ting is fully aware that he might not survive this, but he's determined to buy his teammates as much time as possible. His eyes glow with a fierce, amber light. A mantis monster screeches as it leaps at him, its blades extended for the kill. Gong Ting catches the strike on his glowing blade, sparks flying as the two forces collide. He takes full responsibility for leading everyone into this trap. He parries a follow-up blow, his breathing coming in heavy gasps as he fights through the pain. He won't let another person die because of his mistakes. His sword scrapes harshly against the cave floor as he readjusts his stance. He's reaching his limit, but he refuses to back down. He shouts that since he's the one who started this mess, he should be the one to end it. He's ready to pay the ultimate price for his arrogance. As Gong Ting prepares for the final onslaught, a heavy pair of footsteps approaches from behind. Si Chen hasn't left, he's standing right there. Si Chen admits he misjudged Gong Ting's character. A blue system window flickers into existence as he initiates a class switch, lightning dancing between his fingers. Wreathed in crackling yellow electricity, Si Chen stands tall as a level 24-volt assassin. He tells a stunned Gong Ting that he isn't the only one who signed up for this fight.